Survival horror games have been going through something of a renaissance, and one developer at the forefront of this genre is Supermassive Games. From their successful 2015 release Until Dawn to the Dark Pictures anthology, they've produced several dramatic story-based horror games. The Quarry is their latest release, riffing on the classic horror subgenre of summer camp gone terribly wrong. The game begins with a thrilling opening. Two camp counselors, Max and Laura, are on their way to Camp Hackett to work as counselors for the month. It's not long before things go terribly wrong for these two. After this prologue, players fast forward to the last day of camp, where Max and Laura never showed up. It's here Counselor Jacob sabotages the escape route in order to spend one more night with his girlfriend. These actions and many of the following choices set off a chain of bloody consequences. The counselors might not survive the night, but it's up to you to decide. Despite being similar in tone and style to Until Dawn, the Quarry's rocky pacing, plot holes, and potential for flat endings will let down many gamers. It's disappointing too, because there are moments of brilliance amidst an uneven game. I'm Kat Clay, I'm a writer from Melbourne, Victoria. I'm going to get into exactly why the Quarry doesn't quite work for me in a sec, but if you like video games, writing and creative stuff, please hit subscribe.
Pop, pop, peanut butter pops. Pop, pop, pop them in your mouth. Pop.
So let's get into the gameplay. Like many narrative-driven games, the gameplay is driven by a series of quick time events or QTEs. Press the buttons in the correct combinations and you'll succeed at the action. Although be warned, success is not always a guarantee of good outcomes. Sometimes you'll need to restrain yourself or others from taking action. You'll often have the choice to run or hide, although the outcomes are often the same. Hiding brings up a breath-holding QTE, which is relatively easy as long as your hand doesn't slip off the controller, and it's a lot easier than doing the QTEs for running. In Until Dawn, players had to hold the controller still, which was much more challenging, but could also pose accessibility issues. I'd suggest keeping the previous mechanic while providing a secondary option for accessibility to increase the challenge of the game here. Despite being a horror game, there's a lot of walking around and there's no capacity to run in the Quarry, making for some long stretches of walking throughout the environment to search for ever elusive clues, these bright shiny beacons in the dark. This can become a little tedious, especially if you're replaying the game. As you're exploring, finding clues and tarot cards reveals more about the history of Hackett's Quarry and the supernatural mystery behind the game. Unfortunately, you can't find all the clues in a single playthrough, but much of the backstory can be figured out, especially if you're thorough in looking for the tarot cards. The tarot card mechanic allows you to see potential future outcomes, much like the totem poles in Until Dawn. Whether these are good or bad, well, you can also choose not to view them at all, and if you do so, you actually get a trophy for that. While the symbolism of the tarot cards has been a common fixture in recent video games, such as Persona 5 and Cyberpunk 2077, it makes sense to use it in this mystical horror story, and the tarot reader is certainly the best acted and animated character in the game. One of the fun aspects of the Quarry is playing in couch co-op mode. You're able to allocate characters to a player and pass the controller around accordingly. It was fun to see how another person's choices affected my gameplay, and it's something that is enjoyable if you have a few flatmates to share the terror with. Although, make the wrong choices and one player's success could lead to another's death, and maybe some awkwardness between friends. The graphics here are a mixed bag, where some characters are really well rendered, such as the hag from Hackett's Quarry. Emma's lips and facial expressions are one of those ones that are hard to look at, whether she's slipped over into the uncanny valley or whether there's been a little bit off in the animation of Halston Sage, who I really like from the Orville. I'm not sure. Likewise, the water animations look like they're from the early 2000s and need additional rendering work, especially when characters are splashing around in the water. So I'm going to get into the narrative and storytelling of the Quarry, and obviously, spoiler alert, to fully review the game, I'll need to discuss the ending, as this is where many of the issues lie. If you want to play the game before hearing the rest of my review, my short answer would be to wait and purchase this game on sale. I have mixed feelings about the Quarry, and while it's enjoyable enough, it's not a game I would rush out to buy. So into the story and the narrative. The Quarry is a symbolic name. It's not just the location of Hackett's quarry, but the idea of hunting and being hunted. With the rising full moon present in the very opening of the game, the secret of the Quarry is fairly well signposted. Where Until Dawn kept me on the edge of my seat until late in the game, I didn't really know what the big bad really was, and if there even was one. In this game, The Quarry, it's fairly obvious to any horror fan that the full moon only means one thing: werewolves. But this isn't Fluffy Jacob from Twilight, oh no. These are rabid, rubbery looking monsters who bear less in common with wolves and more with the vampires of I Am Legend or 28 Days Later. There are 8 playable characters in the game, which allows for a wide range of characters to root for or to hate. You'll have your favourites and your less beloved characters, and then there are the ones you downright want to destroy, which would be Emma. In fact, at the first available opportunity, our couch co-op session voted Emma should open a very suspicious looking trapdoor. And that was that. Bye-bye, Emma. She was out for the rest of the game, and we probably enjoyed it a little bit more. It's not that the acting is bad here, it's a problem with the writing. There was no nuance to Emma's character, written as a down-the-line archetype of an influencer. Where other characters showed hidden depths through the story, Emma proved to be the nuisance she was, a narcissist narrating her life into her phone at every opportunity. I mean, that's coming from me, someone who's on YouTube. I would have liked to see more of her insecurities a little earlier on to make her a more interesting character. If not a likable one, at least one I kind of wanted to keep alive. Using 8 characters creates another underlying problem for the game developers, although it's not so obvious at first. To experience the full arc of the game, ending and all, the game does favour Laura, Travis and Ryan. None of the character strands can be replaced by one another, so if you lose any of these characters before the final chapter, you'll be left with a limp ending. But more on that in a moment. I'd like to just talk a little bit about the writing and pacing before I talk about the ending. The dialogue is solid here, although could have been pared back, especially in the scenes in chapters 2 and 7. The snarky chats between characters felt real for me, although there was a little too much of it at points. It's a hard line to toe between entertaining the player, character consistency, and maintaining the threat of a horror narrative. There are points later in the game where comedy diffuses the terror, and part of me wishes they'd pushed more into maintaining the tension than alleviating it. Where this balance works best is in the scrapyard scene. It's a pitch-perfect example of maintaining tension and threat, and one of the few places I was on the edge of my seat button bashing to save my 2 favourite characters. Chapter 7, where the fate of Laura and Max is revealed, lingers too long on explanations in the prison cells, deflating the tension that's been so well wrought over previous chapters. It also provides us with one of the Quarry's biggest plot holes, and there are a significantly large amount of plot holes in the Quarry. I'm normally someone who can let disbelief slide, but this level of denial is big, even for me. Why don't the campers just squeeze into Chris Hackett's car at the start to be whisked away to the hotel before sunset? Why are all the characters with significant wounds, I don't know, amputated hands, still wandering around like nothing happened? On finding out that werewolves don't like water, why don't the councillors launch themselves into the myriad of boats down at the lake? And why, when Laura gets access to a computer with the internet, does she not email everyone she knows for help? Now I'm going to talk about the ending. Any video game ending should still be satisfying despite the choices made by the character and regardless of who ends up surviving. It doesn't have to be a happy or a good ending, but it's good to have a satisfying ending or something that rounds out the story despite whoever lives or dies. There seems to be trophies for the extremes here. Everyone dies, everyone survives, lovers are reunited. But the less extreme outcomes are where the endings fall over. With Abby, Dylan and Jacob all alive at the end of my game, there was no wrap up for them. Cut to, this is what happened to everybody. A kind of you suck slap in the face. They should have simply thrown up a souls like you died. Unfortunately, the satisfactory ending, because I refuse to call things a good or bad ending, rests almost entirely on your actions at the end of chapter 9. This could have been fixed by having a moment where everyone who is still alive arrives at a certain point to have a final showdown. It would add a sense of completion for the players, even if they don't survive the ending. Once you've finished the game, you'll be met with the option to start a new game with an additional tool for death rewinds, something that would have been quite helpful at several junctions where my fingers fumbled the controller. You'll also be able to access the chapter replay function, which I used to replay chapters 9 and 10 to gather a greater understanding of the story I missed. A massive missing feature at the moment is the ability to skip dialogue, which means the game has limited replayability at present, unless you want to listen to everyone whine about peanut butter pops again. Despite its promises of a classic camp horror story, the Quarry doesn't quite hit the mark. While I had an enjoyable enough time playing the Quarry, the uneven pacing and flat ending left me wanting. I'm Kat Clay, I'm a writer from Melbourne, Australia. I love video games, writing, playing TTRPGs and doing cosplay. If you like those things too, please hit subscribe, and thanks so much for watching.